Hey, creepy crew. Some creepy stories announce themselves immediately. A stranger follows you home, somebody pounds on the door at 3 in the morning. You see the danger sees you, and everybody understands the arrangement. These stories are not like that. Here, the uncomfortable part is how long everything can remain technically normal. A buzzer rings, a coworker sends a message, a former patient sits quietly in a waiting room, a car stops beside a bus stop, a girlfriend remembers something she maybe should not know. A first date says one sentence too many, and none of those things by themselves automatically mean disaster. That is exactly the problem. Human beings are extremely good at explaining away one strange detail when the rest of the picture still looks familiar. We prefer the ordinary explanation because most of the time the ordinary explanation is correct, until suddenly it is not. So today we have 6 stories about boundaries, assumptions, and the precise moment when probably nothing becomes something you should actually pay attention to. I was in my 20s when this happened, living with a roommate in a small apartment building in the Midwest. We were on the first floor, only a few doors from the main entrance. It was winter, still dark outside, and my roommate had to leave earlier than I did that morning. I remember hearing him get his coat and keys together, then the apartment door shut, and he went out to his car. The one thing about the building that matters is the front door. You needed an electronic fob to get in. My roommate had forgotten his before, and when that happened, he'd use the intercom and buzz our apartment, so I could let him back inside. It wasn't unusual. Mostly it was just annoying, the kind of thing where I'd let him in and probably make fun of him for getting it again. A few minutes after he left, the buzzer went off. I was barely awake and immediately thought, seriously, he forgot it again. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't even use the speaker. In my head, the timing answered the question for me. He had just walked out and now somebody was buzzing our apartment. That was as far as my thought process went. I got up, pressed the button that unlocked the main entrance, and started back toward my room. Then I heard the outside door open and close. I expected to hear my roommate coming down the hall. The first floor hallway was small, so you could usually tell when somebody was moving around out there, especially that early when everything was quiet. I was basically waiting for him to come straight back to our apartment. Instead, the person who came in stopped at another door. I heard a handle go down and come back up. Then there were a few steps and another handle. No knocking first, no voice. Just somebody trying a door, moving on, and trying the next one. That got me awake pretty fast. I stood there listening for a second because I wanted to make sure I wasn't somehow hearing it wrong, but there really wasn't much else it could be. Our floor wasn't big. Someone was going along the hallway, checking apartment doors. I went over to our door, kept it shut, and looked through the peephole. There was a man in the hallway I'd never seen before. My roommate wasn't there. The guy had on a light jacket, which I noticed because it was really cold outside, but there wasn't anything else about him that screamed danger or anything like that. He also wasn't focused on my apartment. He was farther down the hall, at another door. I watched him try the handle. It didn't open, so he let go and kept moving. He wasn't coming straight toward me, and he didn't seem to know which apartment had buzzed him in. He was just going along the first floor. And yeah, at that point, I felt incredibly stupid. He had been outside the building, the buzzer had gone off, and I had let him in without hearing a voice or checking anything. There wasn't really anybody else to blame for how he'd gotten into the hallway. I had just assumed I knew who was on the other end, because the timing made sense. I checked our lock, even though I was almost sure it was already locked, then grabbed my phone and texted my roommate. I told him there was some guy inside trying apartment doors and not to come back into the building. I told him to stay in the car for now. I remember being very matter-of-fact about it, because there wasn't much else for him to do from out there, and I definitely didn't want him walking back in while this guy was still in the hall. I stayed by the door and listened. The man's footsteps were getting closer. He wasn't rushing. I could hear him move a little, stop, then move again. I kept checking through the peephole because I wanted to know when he got to us. I wasn't trying to figure out some big plan. At that point, I mostly wanted to make sure my own door was shut and know where he was. Then our handle went down against the lock. It came back up. A second or so later, he knocked, not pounding. Not kicking the door, nothing like that. Just a normal knock. Honestly, that felt strange after I'd just watched him try other people's doors, but he wasn't acting wild or threatening. He said he was freezing and asked if he could come in for a little while to warm up. Maybe that was true? I have no idea. I didn't know then, and I still don't. But I wasn't going to open the door to find out. He was already inside a building you normally needed a fob to enter, and I'd seen what he was doing before he reached my apartment. Whether he had some innocent explanation for it or not, I wasn't comfortable giving him access to the apartment too, so I stayed quiet. For a few seconds, he was right outside. Through the peephole, I could only see part of him because he was standing so close to the door. I had my hand near the lock, even though the lock was already doing exactly what I needed it to do. I think that was mostly nerves. There wasn't some extra thing I could do to make the door more locked. He didn't knock again. After a little while, I heard him move away. When I checked the peephole, he was farther down the hall. He stopped at one more apartment and tried that handle too. It stayed shut. My roommate texted, asking if he should come back inside. I told him no. The guy was still inside and to stay in the car. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine and the door was locked. That was pretty much our whole conversation while it was happening. For the next few minutes, I basically just stood there. I didn't go into the hall and tell the guy to leave, and I didn't start talking to him through the door. I'd already made one stupid decision that morning. I wasn't about to make another one, because I felt like I needed to somehow fix the first. I could still hear him moving around the first floor, but none of the doors seemed to open for him. There wasn't any yelling or banging. Mostly I just heard him walking and, every so often, another handle. It felt longer than it probably was because I was doing nothing except listening. Eventually, the hallway went quiet. I looked through the peephole again and saw him pass our apartment heading back toward the front entrance. He didn't stop at our door. I stayed where I was and listened until I heard the main building door open and shut. I still didn't text my roommate right away. I waited a little longer. I couldn't tell you exactly how long, probably only a couple of minutes, but I wanted the hallway to stay quiet before I told him it was okay to come back in. Once it had, I messaged him that the guy seemed to be gone, and that was it. He never came back, and I never had any other contact with him. I never found out what he actually wanted either. He might really have been freezing and looking for somewhere warm. Maybe he hoped he'd find an unlocked apartment and take something. Maybe he was just looking for any door that opened. I don't know. Those are guesses, and I don't want to turn one of them into an answer, just because it makes the story neater. The part that still makes me feel stupid is how automatic my part was. The buzzer went off a few minutes after my roommate walked outside. I assumed it was him, and I pressed the button without even asking who was there. What makes this story uncomfortable is not that the man got into the building. It is how little effort that required. He did not pick a lock. He did not tailgate somebody through the entrance. He did not defeat the electronic system at all. The security worked perfectly. The resident simply pressed the button for him. And this is an extremely ordinary failure. The buzzer came a few minutes after the roommate left. Therefore, the person buzzing must be the roommate. Sensible enough. Except timing is evidence, not identification. Then comes the useful part. Once the mistake becomes obvious, the narrator does not try to compensate with another mistake. He does not open the apartment door to question the man. He does not walk into the hall because he feels responsible for letting him in. He locks down, warns the roommate, watches, and waits. We never learn what the stranger wanted. Maybe warmth, maybe an unlocked apartment, maybe something else entirely. But honestly, his motive is almost secondary. The important thing is that one lazy assumption bypassed a locked entrance, and one locked apartment door stopped the consequences there. Security systems are only as careful as the person holding the button. I'm posting this because I still feel stupid about how casually I handled it at first. I'm one of a few shift leads at a small, privately owned manufacturing place. I'm not some HR person or anything. I started on the floor like everybody else, and eventually got trusted with the usual lead stuff, mostly call-outs and shift changes. If somebody needs Tuesday off and somebody else wants the hours, one of us usually just works it out. A while back, our scheduling app started acting up. It wasn't some huge disaster. People just weren't getting updates right, and swaps were getting missed, so I did what felt like the easiest thing, and made a WhatsApp group for my shift. Everybody got added. We used it for a few days to post schedule changes and stuff like that. Problem solved, basically. Except, I didn't think about the fact that everybody in the group could see everybody else's personal number. I know, obvious. At the time, it honestly just didn't register as a problem. We already used our phones for work sometimes, and I was thinking about getting people to show up on the right days, not privacy. I'm not saying that as an excuse. That's literally just where my head was. Two people in the group matter here. One was a 19-year-old woman who'd been working with us for a while. The other was a newer guy who was around 40, maybe a little older. I didn't know him very well yet. He came in, did his work, and hadn't given me any reason to think twice about him. His station was along one of the outside walls of the building. There are normal windows over there looking out toward part of the employee parking lot. I'm only mentioning that because it matters later. At the time, it was just where his station happened to be. Not long after I made the WhatsApp group, the woman came up to me during the shift and told me he'd started messaging her directly. I asked if it was work-related. She said no. He was trying to start personal conversations with her and kept messaging when she barely answered or didn't answer at all. What really bothered her was that he'd obviously pulled her number out of the work group and just decided to use it. My first reaction was basically, okay, this guy doesn't understand boundaries. I thought it was inappropriate, weird, definitely, but I did not treat it like a work problem. That was my mistake. I told her, just block him, don't answer. And that was pretty much the whole conversation. She didn't say she would. She didn't argue either. She kind of nodded and went back to work. And I let myself believe that was handled. I didn't speak to him or take it to the owner. My thinking was embarrassingly simple. The messages are on her personal phone. She can block the number. End of issue. If someone in the comments wants to tell me that was a terrible response for a shift lead, you're right. I already know. A few days later, she came back to me, and this time she had her phone in her hand before she even started talking. She opened the messages and showed me what had been going on. There were way more than I expected. Not hundreds or anything insane, but enough that it was obvious he wasn't just sending one awkward message and taking the hint. He'd ask why she wasn't replying, wait a while, then try to start another conversation. I don't remember every message, and I'm not going to pretend I do. Most of them weren't threatening by themselves. That was part of why I'd brushed it off the first time. It was the fact that he just kept going when she was giving him basically nothing back. Then she scrolled down and showed me a picture. It was her car. Her car was sitting in our employee lot in the same place it usually was, and he'd taken a picture of it. Under the picture, he'd asked why she was still inside the building. That was the point where my stomach kind of dropped. Not because the picture proved he'd followed her somewhere. He hadn't. Not that I knew of, anyway. The picture was taken at work, and almost immediately, I knew where it had probably come from. His station was on the side of the building with those windows facing the lot. From where he worked, you could see that section of parking. He already knew she was on shift, because he was on shift too. He didn't need some secret way of tracking her. The workplace already gave him enough to know whether her car was still outside. That was what I had missed the first time. I treated the phone like it was the whole problem. Just block the number, and it goes away. But even if she blocked him, he still worked in the same building. He could still see whether her car was outside from his normal work area. And I'm standing there looking at this picture, realizing that the number he was using to bother her had come from a group I made. I told her we needed to take it to the owner. I did not go confront the guy. I know some people are going to read this and think I should have marched over there and told him off or whatever. Maybe that sounds satisfying, but I'm glad I didn't. She had the messages. I had the context for how he got the number, and I was the shift lead she had already come to once. So we went to the owner together. It's a small place, so there wasn't some big corporate process where we had to submit a complaint into a system and wait 3 business days for somebody in another state to read it. The owner was there. We went to him. She showed him the messages first. He went through them for a bit and stopped when he got to the picture of her car. He asked where it had been taken from, and I told him it looked like it came from the side of the building where the guy worked, because those windows look over that part of the lot. Then I explained the WhatsApp group. Our scheduling app had been screwed up. I'd made the group as a temporary workaround, and everybody's personal numbers were visible in it. That was how he got hers. Then I had to tell him the part I really didn't want to say. She had already come to me about it a few days earlier. The owner asked, "What did you do?" I said, "I told her to block him." That was it. I didn't have some great explanation for why. I could have said I thought it would stop there, because I did. But it still sounded exactly as bad out loud as it sounds written here. The owner took it seriously, in a way I hadn't the first time. He had the guy pulled off what he was doing and told him not to contact her again. He was also told to go home and that the owner would speak with him separately. I wasn't part of whatever conversation happened after he left, and I didn't ask to be. The guy left that day. I never saw him at work again. I don't know if he was fired or if he just decided not to come back after being sent home. Nobody ever gave me a definite answer, and honestly, I didn't go digging for one. The woman never came to me with another message from him either. As far as what I personally saw at work, that was the end of the contact. There was one thing that stuck with me, though. For a while after he was gone, she would ask one of us to walk out to the parking lot with her when her shift ended. Usually somebody was leaving around the same time anyway, so it wasn't a big production. She'd just ask if someone could walk out with her, and someone would. And yeah, he wasn't there anymore. I knew that. She knew that. She still asked. I don't blame myself for whatever made a guy around 40 think getting a 19-year-old coworker's number from a work group meant he could keep bothering her. That's on him. What I do blame myself for is making everybody's personal numbers available for work because it was convenient. And then, when one of the people on my shift came to me because that had caused a problem, telling her to deal with it herself. There are 2 different problems in this story, and the first one almost hides the second. Problem number 1 is obvious. A 40-year-old coworker gets a 19-year-old coworker's personal number from a work chat and starts bothering her. That is his decision, his behavior, his responsibility. But problem number 2 is institutional, and this is where the narrator gets trapped by his own convenient solution. The WhatsApp group turned private contact information into workplace infrastructure. Then, when that infrastructure was abused, he treated the result as a private phone problem. Block him and move on. Except, she could block the number. She could not block the window beside his workstation. The photo of her car changes the entire scale of the situation because it shows that the contact did not live inside the phone. They shared a building, he knew her schedule, he could see whether she had left. Suddenly, just block him sounds ridiculous because the workplace itself keeps supplying access. To his credit, the narrator finally understands this and stops trying to solve it informally. He takes it upward, documents the context, and the man disappears from the job. But notice what remains afterward. She still asks someone to walk her to her car. The messages stopped. The feeling of being watched did not stop at exactly the same moment. I'm a physical therapist, and a former patient showed up without an appointment after I asked not to treat him anymore. I've gone back and forth on whether this is even worth posting, because nothing happened in the way people usually mean when they tell a scary story. Nobody attacked me. Security never had to drag anyone out. I went home fine. But I still get angry when I think about it, and I think that's why I'm writing it. I was in my late 20s at the time, working as a physical therapist in a small outpatient department attached to a hospital. A couple nights a week, I worked later appointments, so my last patient might finish pretty close to when we were shutting things down for the night. It wasn't a secret schedule or anything. If you'd been one of my patients during those slots, you knew I was sometimes there late. The guy in this story had been my patient for a while. From a treatment standpoint, there was nothing weird about him at first. He used our patient portal, which is normal. People message us about soreness after exercises, whether something is supposed to hurt, whether they should stop doing one of their home exercises, stuff like that. Then his messages started getting more personal, not all at once. He'd ask what I did outside of work or what I was doing that weekend. I'd ignore that and answer whatever question he had about his exercises. Then he asked if I wanted to get a drink with him sometime. I know some people are going to read that and think, okay, he asked once, maybe he misread things. I wasn't deciding he was dangerous. I just knew I didn't want to be the one treating him anymore, and I didn't feel like I needed to personally figure out what he really meant. So I showed the message thread to my supervisor and told her I wanted him moved off my schedule. He wasn't kicked out of the hospital system. He still had access to treatment. They just transferred him to another therapist in our department. I wasn't trying to punish him. I just didn't want to continue that professional relationship. As far as I was concerned, that should have been it. A few days later, I was working one of my late shifts and was already in with my last scheduled patient when someone from the front desk came back and told me that guy was in the waiting room. He did not have an appointment. He had apparently walked in and asked if he could talk to me for a few minutes. I could see enough of the waiting area from where I was to confirm it was him. I remember getting irritated before I was even scared because I'd already gone through the proper channel. I'd asked not to treat him. He had another therapist. There was no reason for him to come see me. I told the front desk I wasn't going out there. They went back and told him that his care had been transferred and that I wasn't available to meet with him. A minute or two later, the front desk person came back and said he was saying it was personal and there had been some kind of misunderstanding. I said no again, and just to be clear, I wasn't mad at the front desk person. She was passing information back and forth because that was her job, and at that point, he was sitting calmly in the waiting room. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't threatening anyone. He wasn't trying to get through the doors into the treatment area. Then, she said, he told her he'd wait. That was the moment where it changed for me. He knew I had said no. He knew he didn't have an appointment with me. He knew another therapist was handling his care. But instead of leaving, he sat down, like staying there long enough might somehow produce a different answer. The awkward part was that I still had a patient right in front of me. I was in the middle of a session. I couldn't just tell that person, sorry, some guy I used to treat is sitting in the waiting room and making me uncomfortable. So I'm ending your appointment early and leaving. I mean, I guess I could have stopped everything if I thought I was in immediate danger, but I didn't. I wasn't alone. My supervisor was still there. The front desk was still staffed. He was staying in the public waiting area. So I went back to treating my patient. We did the exercises I had planned. I checked the movement we'd been working on. I asked the usual questions about pain, whether anything had gotten worse since the last visit, whether the home exercises were helping. And every once in a while I'd get an update. He was still there. I don't want to make that sound more dramatic than it was. There wasn't some huge silent hallway scene. It was still a normal outpatient department. People were finishing up. Staff were wrapping things up. Patients were leaving. That was actually what made it worse. Every time somebody left, there were fewer people between I'm at work doing my job and I eventually have to walk through reception where this man is sitting and waiting specifically for me. At one point, the front desk told him again that I was not going to come out after my appointment ended. I didn't hear the whole conversation from where I was, but afterward, I was told he basically said he could wait a little longer. He still wasn't causing a scene. He wasn't pacing around or trying doors or anything like that. He just would not leave. And that created this really stupid feeling problem. where everybody knew why he was there, but he was also technically still a patient in the hospital system and sitting in an open waiting room. If he had started yelling or tried to get into the treatment area, there would have been a very obvious next step. Instead, he was just sitting there. I kept working. I remember trying extra hard to stay focused, because I didn't want the person I was treating to get a worse session because I was distracted. I corrected. One of their exercises had them repeat a movement, went over what they should keep doing at home, all while knowing this guy was a few rooms away waiting for me. By then, the department was noticeably quieter. I knew the front desk was still there and my supervisor was still there, so again, I wasn't trapped alone with him. I don't want to rewrite this afterward and pretend I was in some abandoned building by myself. I wasn't. But finishing my appointment no longer meant I could just finish my note, walk through reception, and leave like normal. When the session finally ended, I walked my patient toward the front, but stopped on the treatment side before reception. Someone from the front desk met us there and took the patient the rest of the way. I said goodbye from where I was and went back to my workstation to finish charting. I was not going out there to have the conversation he wanted. My supervisor came over, confirmed that I still wasn't speaking with him, and then went out to the waiting room. I could hear parts of it from where I was sitting, but not all of it. She told him he didn't have an appointment, and he couldn't stay there waiting for me after I had already said I wasn't going to meet with him. He needed to leave. He immediately pushed back and said he was still a patient of the hospital and had a right to be there. My supervisor was very calm about it. She told him that being a patient did not mean he could sit in the outpatient department waiting for a specific employee who had already refused to see him. If he had something related to treatment, he could contact the therapist who was actually treating him through the normal channels. He kept trying to explain that there had been a misunderstanding, that he only needed a few minutes, that he wasn't causing trouble. And honestly, that last part bothered me, because in the narrowest possible sense, he wasn't. He hadn't threatened me. He hadn't tried to force his way back. He wasn't making enough of a scene for me to hear every word from the treatment area. He was just refusing to accept no. Eventually, my supervisor told him the conversation was over. He needed to leave, and if he refused, she was going to call hospital security. After that, I heard his voice getting farther away toward the entrance, instead of closer to the treatment area. A minute or so later, the front desk person came back and told me he had left. That was it. Security never had to come up, and he never tried to get into the treatment area. Before we left, my supervisor and the front desk documented what had happened. They made sure the scheduling restriction was clear, so he couldn't end up back on my schedule, and the therapist who had taken over his care was told what they needed to know. Any treatment questions from him were supposed to go through that therapist, and the normal patient channels, he never came back asking for me, and he never sent me another personal message. I still don't know what he expected to happen if I walked into that waiting room and agreed to talk to him. Maybe he thought he could explain himself. Maybe he thought if he waited long enough I'd feel rude and come out. I really don't know. The part I can't get over is how normal everything still looked while it was happening. I had already noticed the boundary problem, shown the messages to my supervisor, and gotten him transferred. I did what I was supposed to do. And then, a few days later, I still had to stand there asking another patient how their knee felt, while this man sat a few rooms away, waiting for me to finish. This story is about a very strange loophole people sometimes imagine exists inside the word no. The therapist did everything correctly. She saw the professional boundary changing, showed the messages to her supervisor, and had the patient transferred. He still had treatment. He still had access to care, he simply no longer had access to her. And apparently in his mind, that was negotiable. So he shows up without an appointment and asks to talk. She says no. He is told no again. Then he waits. That waiting is the whole story. Because if he shouted, threatened somebody, or tried to force the treatment room door, the situation would become simpler. Not safer, obviously, but simpler. Everybody would immediately know what category of problem they were dealing with. Instead, he stays calm and behaves as though persistence is a neutral act. He is not causing trouble. He only wants 5 minutes. He is only sitting there. Yes, sitting there after being told the person will not see you is the problem. The supervisor eventually makes the boundary physical, leave, or security becomes involved, and suddenly he can leave, which tells us something useful. The obstacle was never that he could not understand the answer. He just preferred the possibility that enough waiting might change it. I'm posting this because this happened a while ago, and I still think about the first morning way more than the second one, which is probably backwards. I was 17, a senior in high school. Our neighborhood was small, and the same school bus route picked up some middle school and high school kids on our side of the district. So most mornings I waited at the same stop with this kid who was around 11 and lived one street over. We weren't friends. I knew his first name, he knew mine, and sometimes we'd complain about the bus being late. That was about it. Usually we just stood there half asleep. One morning, it was really cold, and this completely normal-looking sedan pulled over a little ahead of the stop. The driver stayed in the car, rolled his window down, and started talking to the kid. The kid answered him. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, and honestly, I wasn't trying to. From where I was standing, nothing seemed off. The kid wasn't backing away or looking over at me. He just stood there, talking to the guy. So I filled in the blank myself. I figured it was his dad and uncle, maybe somebody his family knew. I didn't know his parents, so I had no reason to think much harder about it. The conversation was short. The guy never got out, the kid never got in, and after a minute or two, the sedan drove away. Then our bus came, and we went to school. This is the part I feel stupid about now. I didn't ask the kid who that was. It genuinely didn't occur to me. At the time, it would have felt about as necessary as asking why somebody's uncle had stopped to say he. By that afternoon, I'd basically forgotten it happened. The next morning, we were at the same stop again. It was cold, the bus was a few minutes late, nothing unusual there. Then a sedan came down the street and pulled over near us. I recognized it as the same one from the morning before. The driver rolled the window down and started talking to the kid again. I looked over because I recognized the car, not because I suddenly thought something bad was happening. But this time, the kid moved toward me. He came over pretty fast and shifted behind my shoulder, basically putting me between him and the car. Then he leaned toward me and said, really quietly, "I don't know him." That was it. I know people are probably going to say I should have figured something out the day before. I didn't. But once he said that, there wasn't much to figure out in the moment. I didn't know who the guy was or what he wanted. I just knew the kid was telling me he was a stranger, and that same stranger had come back to his bus stop 2 mornings in a row. So I stayed where I was, with the kid behind me. The man kept talking like this was still a normal conversation. He said the bus was taking forever, and it was too cold for the kid to be standing out there. Then he offered him a ride. The kid didn't answer. He moved a little closer behind me, enough that his backpack bumped my arm. I didn't ask the guy who he was. Maybe I should have. I don't know. I was 17 and mostly thinking, okay, this kid does not want to go near this car, so don't let him end up near the car. I said, he's not going anywhere with you. That was the first time the guy really looked at me instead of the kid. He said he was just trying to help. He wasn't shouting or anything, but he sounded irritated now, like I was the one making the situation weird. I told him the kid's mom was supposed to be coming down to the stop any minute. That wasn't exactly true. I had no idea where his mom was. I just wanted the guy to think another adult was about to show up. Then I pulled out my phone and held it where he could see it, like I was about to call her. For a few seconds, nobody did much. The kid stayed behind me. I kept the phone in my hand, and the guy sat there with his window down. He said something about us making a big deal out of nothing. I didn't argue. I definitely didn't have some cool response ready. I just stayed there. Eventually, he rolled the window up and drove off. I stayed with the kid until the bus finally came a few minutes later. We got on and went to school. That afternoon, when we got dropped off, I walked the few houses to his place with him. His mom answered the door, and I told her what had happened both mornings. I made sure she knew the important part, which was that her son had told me he didn't know the man. I didn't tell her the guy was definitely trying to kidnap him, because I have no idea if that's what was happening. None of us ever found out what he wanted. I just told her what I'd actually seen. She was obviously freaked out and thanked me for staying with him. For the next several mornings, she came to the stop with him and waited until the bus showed up. I didn't see the sedan there again during that time. I still don't know who the driver was. Maybe there's some explanation for it that makes the whole thing less bad. I honestly don't know. The part I can't really shake is the first morning. I was right there, watching the same guy talk to that kid, and in maybe 5 seconds, I decided he probably belonged there because it looked normal enough. The first morning is scarier than the second for one very simple reason. On the first morning, the scene successfully explains itself. Adult in a car, kid talking to him. Kid does not look alarmed. Fine. Parent, uncle, neighbor, family, friend. Pick one. And once the brain supplies that missing relationship, there is almost nothing left to react to. The next morning, the entire interpretation collapses because the kid says 4 words, "I don't know him." Now suddenly the same sedan is not familiar transportation. The same conversation is not harmless small talk. The same adult returning to the same bus stop is not background information anymore. What I like about the 17-year-old's response is how little he tries to investigate. He does not demand the stranger explain himself. He does not walk toward the car. He does not need proof of a kidnapping attempt before deciding that the 11-year-old should stay behind him. He creates friction instead. Another adult is supposedly coming. A phone is visible. The kid is not getting in the car. Maybe the driver had some explanation. We never get one. But children do not owe strangers the benefit of the doubt when the stranger is repeatedly trying to create access. The teenager did not need to know what the man wanted. He only needed to understand that the kid wanted distance. My ex knew where I slept one night, and I still don't know how. I've gone back and forth on posting this, because it sounds stupid when I say it out loud. Nothing actually happened to me. Nobody broke into my apartment. I wasn't attacked, and Aaron and I have been broken up for a while now anyway. Also, this is not why we broke up. We had other problems later, normal relationship stuff. I don't want to turn one weird conversation into some secret explanation for the whole relationship. I'm posting it because this is the one thing from that time I still catch myself going over in my head. And before anyone says it, yes, I know I could have told her and forgotten. That is completely possible. I forget conversations. Everybody does. I'm not claiming I have some perfect memory and therefore something creepy definitely happened. The problem is, I remember the actual night pretty well, and I have no memory of telling Erin the 2 things she later mentioned. At the time, I lived alone in a normal rental apartment. The front door opened into a little entry area off the living room, and my bedroom was farther back, down a short hallway. Pretty basic place. One night, late enough that I didn't feel like dealing with it, the lock on my front door started acting up. The door would shut, but the lock wasn't catching the way it normally did. I messed with the key and opened and closed the door a few times before finally admitting I wasn't going to fix it myself. I called the management number. They told me maintenance could come in the morning. Nobody had tried to get in. I hadn't heard anything weird outside, so I didn't treat it like some emergency and go find somewhere else to sleep. I just didn't trust the door enough to go lie in my bedroom and forget about it. I dragged a kitchen chair over and wedged it against the door. Not exactly high security. I just figured if the door moved, the chair would scrape or fall and wake me up. Then I got a pillow and blanket and slept on the floor in the living room near the entrance. I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but it was late and I was tired. At the time, it seemed easier than lying in bed wondering whether the door had opened. There was a small hallway light near the entry and I left it on. That way, if I woke up, I could just look over and see the door. I had my phone with me, obviously, but as far as I remember, I mostly used it to deal with the landlord. I don't remember texting Erin that I was sleeping by the door. I don't remember making a call just to tell her about it either. Honestly, the whole thing barely felt worth mentioning. My lock was broken, I slept badly for one night, Maintenance was coming in the morning, and that's basically what happened. Maintenance showed up, worked on the lock, and the problem was over. I put the chair back in the kitchen, picked up my stuff, and went on with my day. A few days later, I was hanging out with Aaron, and somehow the broken lock came up. I couldn't tell you what the rest of the conversation was about now. What I remember is her casually saying something about how I had slept right by the door that night. I stopped and said, "Wait, how did you know I slept by the door?" She looked at me like I was being weird. "You told me." At first, I honestly thought, okay, maybe I did. Maybe I mentioned it and forgot. So I told her I didn't remember saying that and asked when I had told her. She said, "Matt, you told me you slept by the door because the lock was broken. You even left the hallway light on all night." That second detail is the part that bothered me. Sleeping near the door, maybe she could have guessed. Still pretty specific, but whatever, the light was different. Leaving it on was just this dumb little thing I did, so I could see the door when I woke up. I hadn't thought about it since that morning, so I asked when I supposedly told her. That night? Later? She couldn't remember the exact conversation either. She just kept saying I had told her, and I could tell she was starting to think I was being an ass about it. From her point of view, I had forgotten a normal conversation and was now making her explain herself. I checked our messages from that night and the next couple of days. There was normal couple stuff in there, but nothing about me sleeping near the door or leaving the light on. I know that proves almost nothing. We talked in person, we talked on the phone. I could have said it once and completely forgotten. Erin pointed that out too, and by then she was annoyed. I kept pushing because I wanted something to click. I wanted to suddenly remember telling her after dinner or during some random call and feel stupid for making a thing out of it. Nothing clicked. Eventually she said, "What are you even saying, Matt? That I was watching you or something?" And no, I couldn't honestly say that. I had no reason to think she'd been at my apartment, and I had no idea how she would have seen me anyway. There wasn't anything else pointing in that direction. But I also couldn't make myself say, "Yeah, you're right, I definitely told you," because I still didn't remember doing it. That was basically where the argument died. She thought I had forgotten a normal conversation. I thought that was possible too. I just wasn't certain, and neither of us had anything that could settle it. Nothing else like that happened after. Erin never brought up some new private detail I didn't remember telling her, and I didn't turn the whole thing into an investigation. There really wasn't anything to investigate except my own memory. For a while, I tried pretty hard to just decide I had forgotten. It is still probably the simplest explanation. What actually changed was smaller. I started paying more attention to what I told Erin. Sometimes after a totally ordinary conversation, I'd catch myself running part of it back later, trying to remember whether I had actually said something or only thought about saying it. We eventually broke up for other reasons. There was no big final incident connected to this, and after we split, nothing happened that explained it. So I'm still stuck with the same two possibilities I had then. Either I told Erin exactly where I slept that night and that I left the hallway light on, and I completely forgot the conversation, or she learned those two things some other way I never found out about. This may be the most irritating kind of creepy story because it refuses to become a proper mystery. There are two explanations. One, Matt told Erin that he slept beside the broken door with the hallway light on, and later forgot the conversation. Two, Erin learned those details some other way. That is it. There is no third act security footage, no hidden camera, no neighbor who suddenly remembers seeing her outside. Nothing arrives to rescue the story from ambiguity. And the hallway light is what makes the ambiguity stick. Sleeping near a broken door is guessable. Leaving one specific light on all night is the kind of small useless detail that feels harder to accidentally reconstruct. But feels harder is not evidence. Memory is unreliable in exactly the annoying way required to keep both possibilities alive. He checks the messages, but they also talked by phone and in person. She cannot identify the conversation either, so nobody can prove anything, including him. The real consequence is therefore not discovery, it is contamination. After that, he starts auditing normal conversations, trying to remember which details he said aloud and which ones stayed in his head. Maybe nothing happened at all. That possibility does not make the story less effective. Sometimes uncertainty itself is what gets into the house and refuses to leave. I'm posting this because I still can't decide whether I overreacted, and that's honestly the part that bothers me most. A couple months ago, I matched with a woman on one of the dating apps. Nothing weird happened over messages. I know people say that after the fact all the time, like there were signs they ignored, but there really weren't any that I can remember. We talked for a few days, mostly about work and places around town, and eventually agreed to get drinks. We picked a bar in a busy part of town because it was easy for both of us to get to. I usually do first dates that way, not because I'm super paranoid or anything. It's just easier. You meet somewhere public, have a drink or two, and if you're not feeling it, you can both go home without making a whole night out of it. We drove separately. I got there first. She showed up a few minutes later and looked like her pictures, which already put the night ahead of a few dates I've been on. That sounds mean. I don't mean it that way. I just mean there was nothing immediately off about her. We got a small table, kind of off to the side of the bar, and ordered drinks. The place was busy, but not packed. There was a game on one of the TVs, and enough people around that it felt like a normal weeknight bar. Nothing unusual about it. The date itself was fine, not good, not horrible, just fine. We did the usual first date conversation, work, dating apps, places around town. At one point, she mentioned a restaurant she liked, and I knew it, so that gave us something to talk about for a while. She was easy enough to talk to at first, but after maybe an hour, it was obvious there wasn't much chemistry. There'd be a pause, one of us would come up with something else, we'd talk for a few minutes, then it would die again. I've had dates like that before. I'm sure I've also been the guy somebody went home and described as boring. So I wasn't sitting there thinking she was strange or dangerous. I was mostly thinking, okay, decent person, probably not a match. We both got another drink. I remember that only because of what happened later. At the time, it was just another drink. I wasn't paying attention to what kind of glass she had or thinking about it as some important object. Eventually, I checked the time. I had work early the next morning, and I was already tired. So when the conversation died down again, I said something like, "I should probably get going. I've got to be up early." She looked at me and said, "Already?" I said, "Yeah, I had work." Again, I wasn't trying to make some statement by leaving. It was a weeknight, I was tired, and the date had pretty clearly reached that point where you either keep forcing conversation or call it. She asked why I was in such a rush, since it wasn't that late. I told her I wasn't really in a rush. I just didn't want to stay out and hate myself when my alarm went off in the morning. She kind of stared at me for a second and said, "So that's it? You're just leaving?" At that point, I was more embarrassed than anything. I figured maybe she thought I was rejecting her in some harsh way, when I really wasn't trying to. I said something like, "No, I just need to head home. It's not a big deal." Then her whole tone changed. She wasn't yelling. That almost would have been easier to understand. She just sounded irritated in a way she hadn't a minute before. She asked if I was trying to get away from her. I said no. Then she said, "What? Are you scared of me?" I actually laughed a little when she said it, not because it was funny, but because I didn't understand how we had gotten there. One second I'm saying I have work in the morning, and the next she's asking if I'm afraid of her. I told her no, I wasn't scared of her. I was tired, and I was going home. She looked down at the glass next to her hand. Then she looked back at me and said, very plainly, "If I wanted to hurt you, I could smash this into your face before you even got up." That was it. She didn't smile or laugh afterward. She didn't pick the glass up either. She just said it and looked at me. I remember sitting there for maybe a second or two, trying to decide how I was supposed to respond without making things worse. And I know some people reading this are probably thinking she was just making a bad joke. Maybe. That's possible. I honestly don't know. Maybe she was pissed because she felt rejected. Maybe she said something stupid in the moment and wanted to scare me. Or maybe she meant it. I didn't know then, and I still don't. What got me was how specific it was. She wasn't just insulting me because I was leaving. She looked at the glass beside her and told me she could use it on my face before I could stand up. A few seconds before that, this was just a mediocre first date. After that, I stopped caring about ending the night politely. I didn't ask her what she meant or try to argue with her. I just said, "Yeah, I really need to get going," in as normal a voice as I could. The bartender came by and I asked to close out my part of the tab. She stayed seated across from me. She still looked annoyed, but she mostly went quiet while I paid. I remember putting my card back in my wallet and being weirdly aware of the glass sitting there, not because she was holding it. She wasn't. It was still just on the table. But once somebody tells you they could smash a glass into your face, you notice where the glass is. I stood up. She didn't stand with me or get in my way. I said goodnight because apparently some part of my brain was still worried about being rude, which is kind of stupid in hindsight. She said something back, but I genuinely don't remember what. Then I walked out. The bar was busy enough that I didn't feel trapped or like I needed to ask anybody for help. I went between the tables, out the front door, and headed toward my car. I didn't really feel scared until I was outside by myself. Even scared might not be the right word. I was tense. My brain kept replaying how fast her attitude had changed just because I said I was leaving. I got in my car and drove home. When I checked my phone later, she had messaged me. The first message was still angry. She said I'd been rude and that I was the one who made the whole situation weird by leaving like that. Then, a little later, there was another message that sounded almost normal. I don't remember the exact wording, so I don't want to make up a quote, but it was basically that she hoped I got home safe, and maybe the night had just gone badly. That second message almost made me second-guess myself for a minute, like maybe I had taken the whole thing too seriously, and we had both just handled an awkward end to a date badly. But I kept coming back to what she actually said. I didn't answer her. I didn't ask whether she was joking or what she really meant. I figured if I had to have that conversation with someone after one date, there was no reason for there to be a second one, so I blocked her. That's basically the whole story. She never contacted me again from another number or another account, and I never saw her again. There wasn't some big update after that. I never got an explanation. As far as I know, that night was the end of it. I know leaving was the right decision. I just still don't know if she was trying to scare me, if she lost her temper and said something ugly, or if for a few seconds she was actually telling me what she wanted to do. There is a point in this date where the evening is boring, and then one sentence completely rearranges the furniture. Before that sentence, the woman is annoyed that he wants to leave. Awkward? Sure. Maybe rude, maybe insecure, maybe just a bad ending to a mediocre date. Nothing especially mysterious there. Then she looks at the glass and explains, with remarkable specificity, how quickly she could smash it into his face. Now we have new information, and this is where people often waste time trying to solve the wrong question. Did she really mean it? Maybe not. Maybe it was an ugly joke. Maybe she wanted to scare him because she felt rejected. Maybe she lost her temper for 10 seconds and would never actually touch him. Fine. None of those explanations creates a reason to stay. That is the important distinction. You do not need courtroom-level certainty about somebody's intention before deciding that your evening with them is over. The cost of leaving is extremely small. The cost of staying around to conduct a psychological investigation can be much larger. He pays, keeps his tone normal, walks out, and blocks her later. No confrontation, no clever comeback, no attempt to win the argument. A first date is an audition for a second one. I could break this glass into your face is a very efficient way to fail it. There is a pattern running through all 6 stories, but it is not trust nobody. Useless advice. If you treated every buzzer, coworker, patient, passing car partner, and date as a potential threat, You would not become safer. You would become impossible to live with. The more interesting lesson is about access. Who gets into the building? Who gets your phone number? Who gets to keep waiting after you said no? Who gets close enough to a child? Who knows private details about your home? Who gets more of your time after making a threat? Most boundaries do not look dramatic while they are being crossed. Usually there is convenience, politeness, uncertainty, embarrassment. There is a thought saying, maybe I misunderstood, and sometimes you did. But the safer response here rarely requires solving the mystery first. The resident does not need to know why the stranger is trying doors. The therapist does not need to decide whether her former patient is dangerous. The teenager does not need to prove what the driver planned. Matt cannot solve his mystery at all. The man at the bar does not need an explanation for the glass comment. They only need enough information to decide what access they are willing to give next. That is the useful distinction. Because I cannot prove this person means harm, and therefore I must keep giving them opportunities, are different statements. We confuse them because people hate looking rude, paranoid, dramatic, or unfriendly. But a locked door is not an accusation. Reporting unwanted messages is not a conviction. Refusing a conversation is not declaring somebody a monster. Leaving a date is not a court verdict. Sometimes it is simply the end of access. And in several of these stories, that decision is where the story stops instead of becoming something much worse. That's all for today. If you have a story where one ordinary detail suddenly changed the meaning of everything around it, send it in. I'll see you in the next video.